So we heard a lot about biochar during this day. We have a number of biochar producers. I'll introduce myself, and the music finally started. I'll introduce myself quickly, and then I'd love to give an opportunity for you guys to talk a little bit about what you all are doing, how you're producing, etc. Because we've heard a lot about the product, but we haven't heard a lot about how it's made, what the feedstocks are, etc. So we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into biochar. So as Jason said, I am the executive director of the US Biochar Coalition. We were founded in 2023, and the goal is to accelerate the growth of the biochar industry. We're using levers of public policy and public relations to advocate in front of legislators, regulators, etc., to try to have more favorable policies that will help advance biochar projects. So, given that introduction, Miles, you gotta. What I was gonna say. Will you take a moment to introduce yourself, your company, and a little bit about what you guys are up to, and then we'll discuss a little bit more particulars about biochar, what we're doing, how we can help accelerate this industry, etc. So take it away.
Well, great. Can you guys hear me now? Is it loud and clear? Well, first things first, I gotta say thanks to Jason and for having us out. What a great event. My first time to Rhode Island. So, Jason, excellent work. All right. Food's great. Venue's awesome.
Weather could be better.
And Maureen, thank you for hosting this. My name's Miles, and I am the co-founder and CEO of Locoal. And we are a technology company that has been really focused on developing a solution where a multitude of different feedstocks, ranging from wood to rubber to plastic, is capable of converting into valuable co-products. Biochar being one of them, energy, bio-oils, and water that comes out of our system that we refine and make ready for immediate consumption. And so it's been a almost 7-year journey of research, development, and building on the technology, and we're happy to say that we are fully into market now. So.
Quick question before we move on to Bernie. Why biochar? Like, how did you get interested in this particular technology? You and I had a conversation where you talked a little bit about your background and how you recognized we were really good about making residual resource, aka waste, in the United States and abroad, but not all that great about cleaning it up. I just would love for you to give a little bit more color on that.
So 15 years ago, I was in I was in Iraq on a deployment, and I remember the very moment that I poured out my last 5 gallons of diesel to burn all of my own trash. And for those who are aware, there was this burn pit sort of solution that we thought was great, but it wasn't. And when I looked at the effect it had on the force, and as an environmental engineer, I just thought to myself, this is a terrible use. It's only destructive. And I had a lot of fun when I was in the Army. I discharged a lot of carbon through ammunition. And I just thought when my time was over with, maybe I should claw some of that back. And I got a chance to meet my co-founder, Petey, here. And Petey's one of those die-hard entrepreneurs in sustainability that literally changed his whole life to pursue a better solution than landfilling. And when I met him, I found somebody who had the same kind of gusto, if you will, the same kind of energy of like, we're gonna solve a problem, and I know how hard it is, and I know all the reasons why people say that it's gonna be difficult and fail, but true north is true north, and you just go, you sprint into the fog. And when I looked at what he was doing, where he was sequestering carbon out of waste, and I looked at the amount of gases he was throwing off in his process, I thought to myself, I think we can harness all that, and through the right type of physics and chemistry, we can isolate and separate the parts of this waste that are usable. And that's why it's taken us a while. So those who have been seeing our marketing for several years being like, when's the Rainmaker coming online? It's online. And we're really proud of it.
That's awesome, Miles. Thank you. We talk about, actually, yep, there you go. Bernardo, I love hearing Miles talk about taking that residual waste and that opportunity and recycling those materials. Tell us a little bit more about ARTi and how you got into the biochar world and what ARTi's focus is. Because when I think of ARTi, I think of the agricultural world. I think about truly recycling those agricultural feedstocks and how you were re-energizing the soil, and not just the soil, but decreasing the need to irrigate, increasing microbial content, all of that when I think of your technology. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Maureen. So I will step back many years ago. I was actually studying agronomist engineer at home, and I came to the US to do a degree in biofuels. I worked for Pioneer, Corteva, and I saw the, lack of sustainability that we have in our agricultural world. And I'm a farmer, I have dairy, and always trying to find, plenty of closing the cycle of the manures, of the feedstocks, of the forages, of the residues that we leave in the field. So when I came to the US, I actually started studying biodiesel, ethanol, the green fuel, and then I got into thermochemical conversions. And then I did my PhD on biochar. But like anyone, I started working in the bio, which was where the money is. And then we got a grant, and then we started doing some biochar because we got that grant. And then I could study biochar, and actually was finding uses of biochar, not even for soil. It was for other things that could make some money out of it. But I think it's kind of tragic, the conception was burn the char, get the energy, and make my biofuel system work. That's a conception that we had in Iowa State. And I said, well, I think there's a lot of value in that carbon, but they just don't see it. I mean, it's hard to sell biochar because the farmers don't see it. So what we try to do is, well, first of all, let's go back. Let's try to make machines to make biochar. And it's not simple. It's simple to make biochar, but you need to make sure that they're economical, that they do a good product, that they're sustainable, that they're automatic, and that they close all the requirements for a project to be successful. So we start working on what is the best design, what is the simplest, and we go through all sorts of iterations. And we start in a farm, we start welding and putting pipes together, drums at the beginning, And that's how you learn. We understood that, there's a reason why we don't see biochar reactors all over. You don't find them as often as you would like to see with all the benefits they have. And the same with the biochar for the soil. Well, you have all these different types of biochars, and they're different. And you have all these different types of soils, and you need to match them correctly. It's not just making biochar. That's the wrong concept of making biochar. So the same thing with all these challenges, what we decided to do is, get out of the lab, because the lab is fun, but we make 1 gram of biochar. Yes, in 1 second, but it's 1 gram. And actually, it was funny because the picture that I showed before in the presentation, before it was my major professor, Dr. Robert Brown. And when I showed him that, he said, literally, never seen so much biochar in my life. Because our reactors are 1 gram biochar reactors. So anyway, everything evolved. Iowa State did bigger reactors, and the same with us. We were in the process of making it bigger and better. But it's always trying to get that solution really to the market, and it's so hard. And we see in the agricultural world, on the forestry, so much waste that it's just a matter of that bringing the technology down and making it feasible. And making it feasible is making it smart. All the parts are there. But how you put them together to work correctly, that's the hard part. So it's the right technology, it's the right feedstock, it's the right handling, it's the right economics, it's the right product for selling to the right market. It is hard. So yeah, they say, well, this is stupid and this is fun. Let's just do it. And we've been doing this for more than 10 years.
It's bespoke, right? It's like you're putting in different inputs to a system that's making a bespoke product, the biochar, depending upon what the utilization is.
Yep.
So, all right, so we're talking in broad concepts. Let's break it down a little bit. I wanted to give Will an opportunity, a little 101, because I mean we've been talking about like this great technology, biochar, but what is biochar? What are the inputs? What's the technology? And ultimately, what's the output? And kind of like, you've done lobbying days with me now, Will. And so pretend I'm a member of some committee or a staff member for Sheldon Whitehouse and I never heard about biochar. I don't think that's possible because Jason probably talks about it all the time. But pretend that I'm a staff member who has a very rudimentary sensibility of what biochar is and try to explain it to me as to, this great opportunity that processes these residual resources. I hate hearing the word waste. It makes me cringe because it's not. It's an opportunity, right? It's a challenge, but that processes these residual biogenic resources into this energy or fuel, and then ultimately the biochar product. I know I've given you a lot, but boil it down, okay?
Make it easy. Right?
Okay, exactly.
Yeah, that's no problem. We don't leave till 11, right? So biochar is a high carbon material that comes from waste, materials that, joking, processed obviously at high temperatures with low oxygen. And how it's used is, as Bernie said, it depends on the feedstock. It depends on the processing temperatures. And so what's the best, there's lots of conversation about, oh, it's black and sooty, it's biochar. No, it's not. And so the process by which it's made is critically important. And, for people that are talking about, oh, I want to make biochar, okay, what kind of biochar do you want to make? What kind of feedstock are you going to use? What kind of processing time and temperature are you going to use? I mean, one of the benefits of all the technologies that you see here or that are represented here is that each one is a different tool that can be utilized in a different way depending on what your needs are. Yes, biochar has very specific soil applications. It has applications in filtration. It has applications in absorbing pollutants. It has applications in higher end industrial uses, but it all depends on the feedstock, the technology that derived or that's used to derive that biochar. And so, there's no one size fits all. I mean, I spend a tremendous amount of time trying to understand somebody's process because just because Pyreg makes a particular tool, it doesn't mean it's the right tool for that customer. And I would rather guide them and say, hey, you should talk to Bernie, or you should talk to a gasification company or some other, to find the right tool for the job. Because, we've seen too many failures in the industry, and it's real easy to say, oh, I'm going to sell units, but, that's only half the problem. And so we want businesses that are successful, and the way we do that is finding newer applications for high quality biochar, finding ways to help customers maximize their revenue streams. And that's what we're all committed to doing, is saying, okay, you have this material, it has value. How do you best monetize that value into this substance called biochar?
I think your description of helping your clients or helping your customers find the best technologies for their particular problem is just such a fine illustration of what I have found in the biochar industry, which is that it's about the rising tide lifting all the boats. Yes, you're competitors, but there is so much of the web of the ecosphere of biochar that has flowed through that, you're really working on the problem of utilizing these residual resources, making energy and this product, and you're willing to help your customers, even if it's going to a competitor and saying they're a better solution to your problem, which I just think is is admirable and a wonderful aspect of this industry. So Miles, building a little bit on what we've all said, there we go. Can you describe the value that biochar has? And I know I'm giving you a loaded potato, but we talked a little bit about it earlier today. And why the heck should any policymaker care about biochar at this point? Like, and speak to both sides of the coin, right? We have a new administration that's obviously focused on America first and farmers first, et cetera. But we still have Democrats that are looking at a midterm election, and their focus may be the other side of the coin, which is maybe helping, heavy industries decarbonize and be more competitive in other markets, lowering those non-tariff trade barriers, et cetera. So if you could speak to that, that'd be wonderful.
A loaded potato.
Yeah.
So I will tell you this. Why biochar, to answer your question directly, is because it's valuable. And the way it's valuable is, I'll give an example that's very particular to our region. I'm from Texas, and we are constantly in drought, but we also grow, from Georgia all the way through Texas out to New Mexico, all the pecans that are consumed. And it's both on the Mexican side of the border as well as the Texas side of the border. Right now, we just did a soil study with one of our potential clients where we went 18 inches down and there's no microbial life. The amount of carbon that's in the soil is effectively depleting. And so in order to grow the food that we eat, we're adding more and more chemicals. It's creating more soil degradation. And then you have to add more water, which you got to pump from underneath the ground, and that uses a lot of energy. So in the effort to grow a pecan, which is only about 50% of the actual pecan itself is usable, you have to dump a ton of energy into pumps to pump water to spray into the field along with chemicals just to get it to grow. When we infuse biochar into it, we reduce our water requirement by nearly half, and over a couple of applications, your chemical requirement almost drops down to 20%. While still generating that yield or a greater yield. And to Bernie's point about specific and application use, that's very true. You have to take the time to actually study what it is. So it's a new process. It's been more developed worldwide, but it's starting to be adopted now, not because people are just excited about some premium commodity. They're facing real problems, real energy costs, real water restrictions. And these are the types of things that are policy driven. So when I speak to my congressional representative, Chip Roy, in my region, or whenever I speak to Governor Abbott in Texas and some of the state legislator, I talk about, well, you've got all this material that is produced. You have cedar waste, you have wildfire residuals, you have pallet manufacturers that have all these clippings. There's no good place to take it. Depending on where you're at, you may not even be able to burn it because of the wildfire risks that are associated with it. So in light of what the administration is doing in terms of tax equity, you got to go back to first principles. Are we actually producing something that's of value that would cause people to shift their behaviors? Not because of a temporary incentive, but more of an improved practice. So PD and I work with universities to develop protocols. We work with environmental regulators to help write improved policy that isn't based on just a conception of renewable or green energy and where kind of solar and wind live. We are being somewhat of a byproduct or a co-product, if you will. It is not the product that we focus on. What we focus on is the transformation of readily available materials and apply them into everyday uses that exist in industry today. And that's how locals position ourselves. And I believe that's how most of us in the industry want to be able to position ourselves, as the intersection between waste and the very real needs to grow food, produce energy, reduce the time and expense associated with just the practice of landfilling, transporting, carrying, driving back, picking up another load. I mean, you're just watching value just get drained, and it's unnecessary.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Miles. So it gets to me to thinking about other policy issues that are really straddling the line between the two political parties, and something that can be, I always say that biochar is not a partisan issue. It's not a political issue. It's about the best utilization of those residual resources to make American-made energy and fuels, and this phenomenal product that is essentially the Swiss Army knife of decarbonization for those other heavier industries. But one of the things that biochar systems are able to do, and that is an issue that is affecting both parties, and both parties are talking about it, is forever chemicals. We have a weird conflagration of MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, with being brought into the new administration. And one of the issues that they're very focused on are various different chemical additives in our environment that are harmful. Certainly PFAS are one of those forever chemicals. Will, in particular, I'd be really interested to hear a little bit about from you, and then go down if the other panelists would like to contribute about this particular issue, PFAS, and how biochar can help with that, whether it's either a system that can perhaps destroy the PFAS and the materials that it's processing, or if somebody would be able to speak to it, mitigation of biochar on land, et cetera, that is affected by PFAS. Biochar seems to have a unique ability to be able to play both sides of that coin, and I'd love to talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. Absolutely. The PFAS chemicals are everywhere. We see them a lot. Pyreg has units that process sewage sludge, and we've been fortunate that our systems have been proven to destroy the PFAS, as well as other chemical pollutants that reside in biosolids. Ironically, 2 days ago, I got a test from some horse bedding that we did, and there were 33 PFAS chemicals in the horse bedding. Really astonished me. And fortunately, we showed that we could destroy that. But, they truly are everywhere. I don't think there's a place we can go and not see it and not see the impacts of them. As land application of biosolids goes away, it's more money for tipping fees at landfills. It's shrinking the life of the landfill, and we've got to find better solutions. And fortunately, pyrolysis will destroy those chemical pollutants that live there. So I think there is a lot that can be done there. Maureen, you touched on the absorptive qualities of biochar. Yes, I think there's a place for biochar to play in that, but I'm a little against the curve on this. I don't think we should just be land applying biochar, because that effectively locks the PFAS in the soil. I think we got to grow crops to get it out of the soil, and then apply biochar to the trace elements that you can no longer capture. But
that's reasonable. Jason, where are you? What's our time on this?
15 minutes.
Oh my gosh, 15 minutes. Woo, all right. 15 more minutes. All right. Well, this is another loaded potato, and I'll start with somebody else, Miles. Actually, Bernie, I'll pass this hot potato on to you. So we've been talking about few issues, challenges that we might be seeing. We've had a lot of changes in the last 100+ days. In particular, I would be really interested in hearing from each of you, what are the challenges that the biochar industry is facing? And do you have any recommendations that you would love to be able to implement to help address those challenges? And you may not have the second portion, that's fine, but I think discussing some of the issues that are around the biochar industry would be great, and would certainly help inform some of the USBC's work as we go and advocate before members of Congress and state legislatures.
Well, that is a hot potato. Let me see. So I would say, I would like to highlight that our industry, there's a lot of risks in everything that we do. I mean, we play with fire, so Literally, it's risky. And now, with this 100 days of this, of politics that is going on, that makes things absolutely stressful for many of us, for investors, for clients. I mean, these are investments, they're real investments. And if we don't have stability in the politics, and if we don't have the cards seen before they play, it's wrong. You know, it's just very hard to put those systems together and, well, hope that there's no politics changing everything, and then you cannot make a product, or you have these regulations, or you have this income that now you do not have. So I would say, number one, we need to bring down to regular politics, you know, and being constructive politics more than anything else. We need that for the industry to grow. I would point out a few things, but, you know, the tariffs, the commerce, you know, being dead like what it is now, we are just snowballing a big problem in a couple of months from now that maybe we are not. This is a personal opinion, but maybe we're not seeing. But it's going to hit us in 2 months, and the inventory of automation and motors and things, we're going to start seeing it as a real challenge for manufacturing and production. And we need real politics. But we need to, I don't know, it's not just cut dry things, you know. That's what I feel like. Sometimes we need to work together to get things done. And when we don't do that and we impose politics on the people, on the governments, on everything, things go wrong, because you need everyone to make it work. And yeah, more and more the Modi rating and all the stuff. I mean, this is a country that works on loan money. And when all those things start hitting, those are effects that we'll see in a couple of months. You know, we might see something now, but it's going to erode. So yeah, I'm honestly a little worried, because we need a stable surface for us to put our machines, and we need to do it. We need to have them, and the investors are going to move. The clients are going to move when they feel comfortable with the situation, and we see the waters maybe not so calm like we would like to see. I'm not sure how to fix that. I'll have you answer that question, but yeah, I feel like we need to be ready for the storm. That's what I will feel.
Thank you, Bernardo. I think one of the things that, you know, we've been trying to stress is that businesses hate uncertainty, and people aren't willing to invest when they don't have at least a plausible path for growth in their investment. You know, otherwise you're just opening up a window and throwing your money out the window. They want to see, even if it's slow growth, they want to be able to see some growth, and they want to be able to depend on that growth. So, you know, that's one of the things that's made the U.S. such a, I think, a valuable market to invest in, is that there have been stable monetary policies, and that has led to the U.S. being a good place for those investment dollars, and we just want to continue to encourage that. Will, I know you and I have talked specifically about this, but would you be willing to talk a little bit about some of the aspects that you guys have been weathering? You know, Pyreg is a German-based company. You know, a lot of the European companies have been the leaders in biochar technologies, especially developing those technologies here in the United States. We're obviously seeing a lot of U.S. companies kind of start to percolate. I'm looking at you, Miles. But I think it would be beneficial to kind of hear what, you know, a company that's invested in these technologies and seen them prosper in Europe, you know, kind of jumped over Biochar 1.0 straight to, you know, professional level industrial production. You know, what are some of the issues that you guys are contending with? What some of the challenges that you see?
That's not a loaded question at all. Yeah, there's a lot. Obviously, the tariffs. I am an eternal optimist. I am confident they'll work something out. Within a day of the tariffs being announced, the EU minister said she wants to negotiate a zero tariff. So I'm fingers, toes, legs, everything crossed that that'll happen. But the reality is that, yeah, Europe is a very different place for biochar. They've got a series of classifications for how it can be used and what materials can be used where, and the U.S. doesn't have that. I mean, we're trying to do that. USBC is trying to do that, institute some standards. And I think at its base level, it needs to follow kind of the Hippocratic Oath, right? First, do no harm. Make sure that the material you're putting in the ground is going to help soils and help plant growth and things like that. Certainly, there'll be other classifications as industry starts to use biochar in its various forms. We try to educate as best we can, but there's still a lot of misinformation out there. I remember I was at a big conference a couple of years ago, and a guy walked by and looked at the Pyreg backdrop, and he saw biochar, and he's like, "Oh, most overhyped product in the world." And I got talking to him, and I said, "Talk to me, what happened?" And he said, "A guy told me to buy biochar. I put it in my garden, it killed all my plants." No idea what kind of biochar it is. Was it full of heavy metals? Was it something that was, taken from equipment not designed to produce biochar? We'll just say it that way. And these are the realities, and that's what all of us have to deal with, is helping end-use customers understand, buy the right product for your need and your use, and make sure that they're well matched, because you can do a lot of damage. It all looks black and sooty. It doesn't, but it's going to be very different depending on, as we talked about before.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, that's one of the things that we're really trying to work on at the USBC, is to have, almost a nutritional label on the back of that biochar that tells the customer what they're buying, what your feedstocks are, what your process is, what the nutrient content is, and then that little QR code that can tell you, use this for this purpose and this amount per, acre, cubic foot. So, we're being better stewards of our own technology and ensuring that our customer is not misled by a product that's not great for them. Because what you're putting in your soils is not going to be what you're utilizing for a coke replacement in steel making. So, very different. Last person on the panel, talk about challenges. Can I pass it to you?
So I agree with the sentiment of Will and Bernie on this. I think there are challenges that are very apparent. That is a shift effectively in the economic policies and how we help underwrite projects and how we kind of project outward tax-based revenues and tax equity incentives, get moved around. I would challenge, though, that if you got into OEM manufacturing of technology for the purpose of avoiding tariffs or to take some sort of incentive, then that's not really the approach. We are a domestic manufacturer, and we look at the problems that are really affecting real people. I go back to the example of the amount of money that's spent on energy to pump water to grow food. Building off of that, you have to ask yourself, what if we were to take all those pecan shells, put them into energy, be sure that we take a full pyrolytic effect where it's right for soil amendment, and then recirculate that back in the ground. And whether or not there's a tax incentive or there's a tariff that's associated with it, you really just have to be lean in your manufacturing process. You have to be smart about the placement of your technology. You have to be confident that you know where to really place it, where it's going to be successful. And that's going to be the challenge on people like us, to advise project developers out there where I think, this is a perfect place for this to succeed, and this is how we're resilient against moving administrations. I have had the privilege of serving in the United States Army through 3 administrations. And each of those administrations brought significant sweeping changes, but what really always, that tide that rises was just a fundamental commitment to solving problems that are not going to go away, regardless of how people want to frame or spin certain aspects. I say again, there is more waste today than there has ever been in the history of humanity. All right. And it's wasteful philosophies, it's wasteful practices, it's misaligned government externality and interference on sort of natural supply demand aspects. And so you just think to yourself, how do I build a business model? How do I build a strategy that is resilient against, a forever changing operational environment? Now, I've, similar to these gentlemen, I've crossed oceans to help institute real solutions in areas that were far more difficult and complex to navigate than even what we're in today. So I'm optimistic. I do believe that we are excellent at building technology, we're excellent at engineering, we're excellent at domestic production and manufacturing, and there's a whole world out there that still does not enjoy the advancements of what many of us are used to. So while the Trump administration and the Republicans have put out a big, beautiful tax bill, globally, I still have seen time and time again areas where an independent waste to energy or bioorganics to energy solution and the co-products that come out of that make a significant difference in lives and businesses and communities. So we're local and we focus entirely on what can we solve for that local community with our technology, and we're headstrong and willing to sprint into this fog as well.
Miles, thank you. That's a really lovely summary, and I really appreciate you moving away from the W word. Do we have time for one or two questions if anybody has one? I know we're
a hardcore group. We can definitely take a question or two.
all right. We've got a few people, and then we can go break down the bar.
I'll pass the.
Very short question. Can you take the pecan shells and do it for the biochar that they need for the process? Can you use the pecan shells as the biofuel for turning into biochar for the pecan project you were talking about?
Absolutely. That would be the...
Yeah.
There's so many pecan shells that you can't even imagine the piles that I've seen. I'm like, just, wow, we eat a lot of pecans.
Whether it's pecan shells or almond shells or pistachio shells, they're all phenomenal feedstocks for a biochar, and they go right back into the soil to.
I understand that, but
It's that whole circular aspect.
Yeah, the full circle of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, right back to that question, Miles. I guess, is the biochar you're making from the pecan shells the biochar that it's best to put back in those pecan orchards, right? So if Bernie's doing corn up in Iowa and they're doing corn husks, is that what you want to put on corn? Or what do we need to establish a Henry Hub of biochar where we aggregate that and can distribute it where it needs to go, which is back to the QR code you were talking about, which I've talked to Jason about in the past.
Please go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you for asking that, because if you wouldn't, I would ask myself that question to answer it. So I love that. Okay, this is for all the biochar people here. I don't think it's nothing new for many of you, but I like to emphasize it every time. There's too many types of there's too many different types of biochar, and we need to be savvy on how we put it in the soil. I'm going to tell you from a research perspective all the things that I've seen that are wrong, which is, it's wrong, and you see it over and over in the research arena. Imagine on us, on the commercial side, selling biochar. High pH biochars, 8 to 12 in high pH soils for plants that are not suited for high pH. Okay, and then there's all sorts of immobilization of nutrients and chelates, all stuff like that, and then the plants turn yellowish, and you see all sorts of problems with that. But you see it very often. Other issues, common issues as well, salinic biochar with high EC, the same thing. High concentrations, we put them right next to the seed, and we tell seed, go ahead and grow. And you're putting salt around. That's pretty much, in high concentration. So we need to know the basics, to apply that. How much you apply. And this is the easiest thing to have it wrong, and we all have it. We all done it. If you put biochar, you all done it. So the biochar, when it comes from the reactor, is inert. It's actually, I like to explain it as a chemical sponge. So I put it on the soil, and the first thing that it's going to do is going to suck all the soluble nutrients out from the soil solution, which is competing directly with the roots and the plants. So don't put 5 tons of biochar and plant right after, you know. At least wait a couple of weeks, at least. But this is for every one of us. Don't use biochar. Don't use biochar. Use biochar products. So when you want to use biochar, at least what I recommend is mix it with compost, 50-50. And then you're not going to go wrong with it. But if you don't know, that's when the problems start to happen. Because you need to know a little bit more to apply it correctly. And again, this is another thing that is a misconception. We don't apply biochar and see the effects like you see with the fertilizer. You don't. So we need to educate the other side to tell them, you're improving the soil. Improving the soil takes a lot of time, and the benefits you harvested through all these many years. But expect 5-10% of yield, not 100. This gentleman that it was criticizing the biochar from Will, it's absolutely like that. We sell it like, hey, put biochar there, and from this plant, you're going to grow a tree next year. They say, no, it's not like that. So we need to lower expectations, and we need to frame it well, and we need to educate the people. And don't put biochar. Just put biochar products, right? So
let's give it up, Maureen and the incredible Miles, Bernie, Will. What a great way to end an exceptional day. And I'll tell you this, when people ask me all the time, where do you get your biochar information from? You're looking at it. We brought them here for you. These are the experts. The bar is still open, so that's key. We'll close the bar down to Maureen's point, but they're going to be here a little while longer. I know there's some of you in this audience that are either in the process of or thinking about doing a biochar project. Talk to them, ask the questions. They always take the time. They're gracious with their time. And I'm just grateful to all 4 of you for making the time to be here and be part of this event. So thank you again. That's a wrap on the conference.